The Commonwealth, established on the 11th of December 1931, born out of the British Empire. The international organisation was initially fuelled by one key message, that Britain and the Dominions would be equal in status and united by an allegiance to the Crown.
Since then, more nations have joined, many became independent, and 2 left the Commonwealth entirely. So, what does the next chapter entail, and where do people's hearts lie in relation to it?
I am Annissa La Touche, writer and geographer at the University of Cambridge, born and bred in the cultural melting pot that is Birmingham. Journey with me in this short film, exploring the dynamism and diversity of the Commonwealth, as well as its future.
The seeds of the Commonwealth were planted in 1926 after the old Commonwealth countries grew frustrated with the excessive control from the British Empire. You see, the old Commonwealth countries became the nations we recognize today following the migration of British nationals in the early 1700s through colonization. Indigenous populations fought hard to protect themselves and their lands from being taken. After much bloodshed, the indigenous lost control to the British colonists who created new nations on the land of the existing ones. The natives were replaced with majority white populations who created new systems which replicated British laws and customs. As these nations created their own identities, they grew tired and frustrated with the hand that Britain had in how they operated. So they and Britain agreed in 1926 to form a Commonwealth. In 1931, they formalised that declaration with the Statute of Westminster. 2 decades later, other countries began to join the Commonwealth, but remained under colonial rule until they each gained their independence. India led the way in 1948 following their 1947 independence victory. In 1949, the decision was made to reform the old association into the modern Commonwealth. All members agreed, free and equal, cooperating in the pursuit of peace, liberty, and progress. Over the following 2 decades, British rule ended in various parts of Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and the Pacific, and they agreed to recognize the Crown as the head of the Commonwealth. Today, 56 nations form the association.
My name is Deirdre Labassiere, and I am by profession a governance expert and professional. And in 2020, I became the first Black female chair of the Lunar Society. So I served for 2 years, and in that time, I got to see a huge amount of what's great about the world and the celebration of its diversity. But in that time, the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement really shone a light on huge social inequalities and injustices. And within the society, we really had to dig deep and delve into that, not just for the sake of the society itself, but for the sake of wider society. So when the Commonwealth Games came to Birmingham, myself and some of the other executive board thought that it would be a fantastic opportunity to look at the background of the Lunar Society, where the original lunar men were both involved in slavery and profited from slavery, but also were significantly engaged in the abolition of slavery. And we considered the people who came to Birmingham and who have made Birmingham their home from all areas of the Commonwealth. And thinking about the fact that Birmingham became a super diverse city in 2021, the first of those cities in the world, we thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to really celebrate, but also look critically at the role of the Commonwealth and whether it's fit for purpose for today and for the future.
It's a family of 56 nations, which, due to their heritage, historical heritage, come together to pursue matters of mutual interest across a range of subjects, but in particular, economic development, peace and prosperity, human rights, democracy, and many more, because in fact there are 16 Commonwealth values and principles. But in essence, that's what I like about the Commonwealth. It's the family aspect and the sharing of challenges and possibilities and outcomes for a better world, for a better Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth is the British Empire. It's just got a new name. They essentially rebranded it. It is this throwback to colonialism, and it really is a terrible institution that doesn't have any real positive role anymore, I think.
So for me, it's positive and negative when I think about the Commonwealth, because we have the legacy of colonialism, which created the Commonwealth. But at the same time, I think of unity, because there are systems in place like Commonwealth Games or even a Commonwealth organization that help to unite us and help us to work towards a common purpose. So in a way, I think that, you have the heavy legacy of colonialism, which the British imposed, but you also have unity amongst the countries that have been under the umbrella of the Commonwealth.
I think the word Commonwealth has two really different meanings for me, which are in tension with one another. So one of those words for me means united, a club of organisations or countries in this case, which are united by something in common. And that has a sort of a positive resonance with me. But at the other end of the spectrum, there is the feeling of empire and of uncomfortable history that goes along with that, and of a displacement of power. And that has quite a difficult resonance with me, because I've worked my entire life to try and even out the playing field, and yet there in our history was quite an uncomfortable kernel, if you like, in that word to do with Commonwealth, around empire and power, and how it was abused and misused.
So I think technically, when I think about Commonwealth, it's a group of nations who are bound by a shared history, who are working towards common goals. I think that would be the more technical definition, but then in reality, what I get confused by is actually there isn't really this collective history anymore between these nations who are bound together, and I don't really feel that there are many shared goals that drive them forward either. And so when we think about the actual Commonwealth and when we think about defining it, for me nowadays the definition is confusing, it can be contradictory, and I just think it's different to what it used to mean.
The Commonwealth is a place of huge culture, amazing diversity, but also a lot of inequality, a lot of hurt and anger that underscores just the journey of the Commonwealth and where it is right now.
I kind of know what it is, not really. I know we're in the Commonwealth. There's a group of countries, I think it's Scotland in it?
Yes.
Because they have the Highland Games, don't they, and stuff. I think that's included. I'm not sure, but I know Birmingham hosted the last Commonwealth Games, and I know it's doing Prince William.
It's a collective of countries that the British Empire took over and they're in control of, and they relate back to the UK. So yeah, and what it means to me, to be fair, nothing.
Like sporting events, raising money, I don't know.
Countries that the UK took over, now they did pay taxes like to the Crown and all that, and if the UK goes to war, like they're allies.
British Empire that was conquered by the British people, like for example Jamaica was one, and all the other countries, but I'm not really sure about the other one, so I don't have like a lot of knowledge about the British Commonwealth.
It's a group of countries that are associated with the UK, countries that have a responsibility to serve the Crown, to serve this government because of the UK's involvement in their country.
I've heard of it, but I've no idea.
A relic of the past when Britain ruled the waves and had many colonies, and I'm not really in favour of this at all. I'm in favour of them taking their independence, which I think most of them are.
As you can see, the Commonwealth is helping, providing a platform for these states and small nations. Furthermore, we cannot talk about the Commonwealth without talking about the Commonwealth Games, a quadrennial sports event which has been a pioneer of social change, and ever since 2002, it is the first fully inclusive international multi-sport event wherein there's been no distinction made between physically disabled or physically challenged athletes and fully abled athletes. One of the first of its kind and a strong driver for its charter and promise of inclusivity.
The proposition may argue that in 1953, the Queen said that the Commonwealth bears no resemblance of the empires of its past. It is an entirely new conception built on friendship, loyalty, and desire for freedom and peace. But how ironic is this? Because with the Commonwealth came continuing imperial control. People were core to the motherland following the Second World War, yet the welcome was always conditional on their economic value for the bosses. A battery of laws blocked immigration and citizenship. Vicious top-down racism was used to keep people out of the country they were told to serve. Therefore, it appears to the eyes of the regular man that the only place that the Commonwealth promotes true development is, and can you take a guess? The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Well, I think the main issue with the Commonwealth is the fact that it is its legacy of the British Empire. It is almost entirely former British colonies, and it's kind of struggling for its place in the world. But what's the purpose of a collection of countries just to be in the British Empire? The British Empire is supposed to be over. So there really is a question here of what's the point of being involved, which is why, particularly after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, you've seen a number of countries really question whether it's worth being in the Commonwealth at all.
Well, fundamentally, the Commonwealth is a force for good. And I think whatever we think about it, that is its ultimate goal, and I believe it achieves that. Practical positives, it's a body which can certainly, due to its size and number, can assist some of the smaller countries who normally, if we're lobbying on some very important subjects, wouldn't carry much weight, whereas the Commonwealth on its behalf would probably carry more lobbying influence as a body.
Important to remember that most people's views are very nuanced. Like, most people aren't idiots. They understand the Commonwealth does a lot of good. They understand it does not a lot of good. So I think I very much lie in that ground where it's like I accept it as something that is quite good and does a lot of good, but also it fails in these ways, and especially in how we talked about a lot of mechanisms, and that's like the reason why, and that these can be resolved, just have to be anyway. So yeah, I think the debate was great. I think both sides did really well. And then just my thoughts on the Commonwealth are, again, it's not a clear-cut answer. It's more nuanced than that.
So many people don't know about, for example, the changes that have come about because of the Commonwealth. They have governance programs. For example, my area is in anti-corruption, and I know they've done a lot of work within the Caribbean on this issue. As well, I know that they're very involved in sports as well, cultural events. So I think that even though there have been negative impacts and historically there have been a lot of heaviness that comes about when you think about the Commonwealth. At the same time, I think that the Commonwealth, as it has come together, has come to signify something different. Yeah, you know.
Well, because I was predominantly involved with the Commonwealth Games, and that has been running since 1930 as an opportunity to come together. And although it is the second largest sporting major event in the world, multi-sport event next to the Olympics, the people that take part in it, the athletes, they call it the friendly games.
Yeah, I've heard them refer to it as that.
And when you speak to the athletes that have competed, they say that it's amongst their favourite memories of their whole professional life.
The only positive factor about the Commonwealth is it is a place that brings together the former colonies. So Caribbean countries, African countries, Asian countries. You could make a case that there needs to be a unity of those countries, and that the Commonwealth could be a space where they could come together. Unfortunately, because it's headed by the king, because it's so linked to empire, it doesn't really do any of those things, but it could. It potentially, possibly, isn't a bad idea to have an organisation that brings together the former colonies.
Having the Commonwealth as like a foundational ground is very important, especially in like low-income countries, for to be able for them to like provide like economically for those countries that need to be liberated financially. I also think it's really important that those children who don't have the opportunity to be able to get a good education, that those educational funds can be in place for those children that don't have that specific opportunity.
I think it's a brilliant place for exchange of cultures, of ideas, of views. I think that it is the perfect opportunity to solve quite a few of the world's issues and the world's problems, because it can create that space and that place for listening. We talk a lot about dialogue, but I think that there's a place and a space for listening first, and listening intentionally in a way that we can hear what other people are saying and on what different cultures are saying. Then learning from those different cultures, and then utilizing those in the circumstances that we might find ourselves in different societies and in different engagements. And I actually saw that happening during the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Different cultures, different dialogues coming together to appreciate and to understand each other. And I see that actually through some of the work that we've been doing with the Lunar Society over the last couple of years since the Commonwealth Games, where we have at Soho House in Birmingham, we commissioned a mural, and we had school children from different parts of the Commonwealth come together to tell us what they would want to see in such a mural, and to provide some of the artwork to that. And that was an incredible thing that we saw in terms of thought processes from young people from the Commonwealth. So that was amazing.
Although Anguilla is not part of the Commonwealth, we're still part of the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. So we're still in it in a sense. Yeah. But for the countries, because the Commonwealth has 56 member states, yes, and those countries are countries with economic states that aren't really ideal. Yeah. So I think that the Commonwealth, in a sense, helps them because they get cheaper trade options. So the imports and exports, they're not as heavily taxed as it would be for countries that aren't, part of the Commonwealth. Yeah. So when they trade with other countries of the Commonwealth, they build a stronger bond so they can help each other better.
I think when we're thinking about collective history, common history, I actually think there's been a collective amnesia for that history. Sometimes we think we have this narrative of countries getting on, countries relating well with each other, but I think there's been a lot that has been almost swept under the rug, a lot of exploitation, a lot of really challenging dynamics between imperial powers and countries who are being exploited and being subjugated. And many of the Commonwealth countries ultimately were being subjugated and exploited. And we see this relationship continue to the present day, even though this real history has almost been forgotten by everyone. And so for me, there's this sense of collective amnesia. You know, we're forgetting the actual dynamics that shape these relationships between Commonwealth countries. And we've almost created an imagined situation that, you know, all of these common things brought people together in a really positive way throughout history. Actually, it was a lot more complicated than that.
Now, obviously, I don't particularly want to dwell on the negative factors because I'm an optimist and passionate about the Commonwealth, but I accept there are negative factors. And I think it depends who you're talking to on that, whether it's a national newspaper or someone in the street. But I observed some weeks ago an observation by somebody in the street, which he thinks negatively about it because for him it represents the Britain in those days, a colonialisation, taking over another country, raping that country of its wealth for the benefit of Britain, and leaving something behind which was a more negative legacy than a positive legacy. So that's one area which I think a number of people might think about. Conversely, you'll hear people say about the positive aspects of legacy and the sort of the family feel to it. So there are two sides to that particular aspect of the argument.
There are huge disparities in wealth and also in social justice across those countries. So while they might have a common thread and some sense of family, maybe, there are countries which are, well, there's still a death penalty in several countries for people who are homosexuals. The attitude to disability, which I've only seen played out really in the para-sport arena, differs quite a great deal in different countries. And gender, that's another issue which is not universally common, the attitude to gender. And again, I saw that through a sporting lens, but it probably is it's probably a microcosm of the wider global inequalities and wider global gaps between wealth and social conditions. However, one of the things that I noticed about the Commonwealth Games Federation as a sporting movement was that it was trying to use sport as a unifying factor to try and make progress on some of these changes. And, you know, while I saw that opportunity in a tiny way here in Birmingham and moved job in order to try and take that opportunity and make some strides and make progress, I think that the Commonwealth Games Federation have been trying to use sport as just the beginning to open up some of these conversations to try and advance social change.
I guess the only controversial view for me for the Commonwealth is the fact that it exists. I mean, honestly, think about the Commonwealth is billions of people, most of them are black and brown. The head of the Commonwealth is King Charles. Why? Why is that the way you want to bring together? There's about almost half the world's population. It's frankly ludicrous that you have this institution and that it's headed by the British monarchy, which is one of the most public symbols of white supremacy. And it's the 21st century, and countries are still doing this and still allowing this to happen. That, for me, is the only controversy with the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth perhaps needs to think about how it can restructure and re-engage itself to be more modern for today's society, such that people and nation states can be autonomous and that it's not a patriarchal type of arrangement.
The Commonwealth has a lot of, I feel like they have a lot of corruption inside, so I feel like they should like work on dealing with that corruption and work on making the countries that are inside the Commonwealth that are like aren't as wealthy, like helping them gain wealth.
There is a notion that once you're a part of the Commonwealth, there's a policy of peace and unity, but I don't really see that.
If the Commonwealth were to continue, I would say that it should be able to allow more equality for people, especially when it comes to ethnicity and race, because there are a lot of inequalities within the system, whether it's healthcare, education. Most people don't know the history because it's been erased and like changed into what the British want us to know in school. So I feel like they should change it and tell it how it is, exactly how it was, how it went, and the results of it now.
I think the Commonwealth Secretariat, which I think the UK sort of funds to the extent of about 75%, may need relooking at, reforming, refocusing, and hopefully under its new head. If that happens, some better things will come out of it. But it needs to evolve, it needs to reflect the way the world's going. And for me, it's a force for good, and if it can be better than it is, great. And if we in Birmingham, Greater Birmingham, and all those around us, the Lunar Society included, can assist in promoting it and promoting the opportunities and the benefits and making those benefits happen, then that's all I'm keen to see done.
We've talked about the difficult past, we're thinking about the challenges in the present. How are we going to move together in the future? And so, whilst Commonwealth is a controversial topic, no doubt, it still is a very powerful institution, and it provides a really important opportunity to build the relationships that we need here in the 21st century to do good in the world. And so the optimist in me says that it's an opportunity there to actually take us forward into a better future. And I would hope that others see it in the same way.
We need to find and be proactive about the ways we connect with each other. We need to probably educate ourselves about the common ground that we share, and to embrace and surface and transparently deal with some of the difficult subjects which we also share.
We know it has quite an agenda on climate change and nature, which I think can only be good, though I'm sure the Queen did as well.
Hopefully the Commonwealth just ends. Like I said, it's the British Empire. It has no place in the world.
Human beings who genuinely seek to be each other's brother's keeper. And that those countries that are advanced economically, politically, financially, would work with the other countries within the Commonwealth to build their base, to build them up in terms of trade, to build economies, to build governance, to strengthen the rule of law, to ensure that young people really genuinely have a chance, so that there is free movement amongst the Commonwealth, particularly in relation to young people, so that you can have those exchange of ideas and exchange of talent, and that those ideas and those talents translate into innovation for the benefit of the all nation states, and that then translates into prosperity, which can really genuinely then give us a resilient future.
So, as we come to the end of our exploration of attitudes towards the Commonwealth, what can we take away? There has been a range of views about the future of the Commonwealth. Some people believe it has a critical future, while others are not so convinced. There has also been a lot of undecided viewpoints. However, for me, I question whether such an institution will be able to keep up in a rapidly transforming world. I sense changing attitudes, growing efforts to decolonise, and a new era for the monarchy are all going to impact the ways in which people relate to the Commonwealth.